The Sound Off Podcast. The show about podcast and broadcast. Starts now.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's save it for the air.
No, this is the air. I think we started already. Who knows?
Oh, do we start? Okay.
Who knows?
You don't have like an intro or anything, right? Like,
no, I just start going, and we just go, and we'll do the rest in post.
There you go. That's what you do. See, that's where you spend a lot. I can tell you spend. You care about your product because you do spend a fair amount of time, I think, in post. Whereas I just record my show and just throw it up there right away. I do the intro and extra live, and off we go.
But you're a radio person. That's what you have been doing for years, anyways. 3, 2, 1, let's go.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's true. And the funny thing is with radio, I don't think we ever learned. Like, we throw away so much stuff. Like, every break is thrown away. It's like you do it, it's gone. And when I was a program director, it bothered me. The morning show would do a great break at 6:10, and like would never touch it again. I would like replay that break. That was great, and it's less work for you.
So that's been cited as one of the biggest problems in radio over the last 10 years, is that we only play things once. And not only is it like you had a good break at 6:10, but you got to bring it back again at 7:10 or 8:10. Yeah. But then it's like, now you got to repurpose it for social.
Yeah. Okay. A couple things. So isn't it ironic that we, like a top 40 station will play a song 100 times a week, but the morning show will only do a bit once. It's ridiculous. We know that repetition, and then we sell we sell repetition as advertising. It's all about occasions. So anyways, but then the talent doesn't want to do something twice, or doesn't want to play something twice. And I understand that. You don't want to be bored. But no, I think what was the initial question? Because I went off on a tangent there.
About repurposing the content outside of the radio.
Yes. Well, I've got 20 plus years as I think I was over 20 as a program. No, I had music director in there too, but as a program director. What I have seen when it came to post on air stuff going out into socials and on to SoundCloud or whatever, if you're just repurposing your stuff from the morning show, you're not going to get any traction at all. Nobody does. You have to offer something new. It has to be something different. It has to be like, give me 15 minutes of uncensored morning show, like right after the show, throw it down. I don't care what it is. In fact, I'm not going to come down on you if I was the program director. I'm not anymore. But I'm not going to come down on you for not being prepared. Just be yourselves for 15 minutes. Mind you, if you're a good morning show, you're already yourselves on the air. That's the thing.
So I remember when we launched Fresh in Winnipeg in about 2012.
Okay.
One of the things we really tried to do was to repurpose the content across the
Fresh network.
Well, the Fresh network, but also repurposing it along the shifts. So if it worked well in the morning, it'll work well in the afternoon. And so you'll bring something in from the morning show to the afternoon, the midday person, and we would all leave our content behind to share and rerun across. It felt a little bit ahead of its time.
Yeah. Humble and Fred did that as well. We had the Humble Report way back in 97, 98 on Edge 102. One of my first jobs as an intern was to take the Humble Report and cut it up and load it into DCS so that it would play. It played every day, and it was a sponsored feature at like 11:30 and 1:30 or something. So yeah, I mean that makes sense, but you have to have the mechanisms in there, and people are lazy. Like if you don't have it set up, people don't want to do this stuff, and that's the problem. We just don't. I don't think we have enough people right now because we've gotten rid of all the good. Well, not we. Certain people have gotten rid of the good people, and you're left with like people who try, but maybe just don't have it.
What's it like in a creative space? And I'll use your time at Kingston because I thought this is really the most excellent place to look at. Kingston is this market where talent was on the way up. There's multiple stations. It is competitive. It is a whole bunch of things. And you're the program director at Chorus. And your job is two things, is to get this content out to people. And you have to nurture talent. And at the same time, you have to determine whether the content is still valid 6 hours later in a world where like time is just speeding up and the news cycle is just spinning like crazy. So tell me what it was like to be PD inside that building in that market?
So Kingston's an interesting market. Kingston's in as a medium market, so it's in the same realm as Ottawa, which doesn't make sense. Ottawa should be a major market, and Kingston is a good medium market. Kingston, London, I think those are great medium markets. Kingston's interesting because there's a lot of heritage in that market. There's a lot of old, they flipped, the fact that we had fresh there. That's the old, the one of the first radio stations in the country, where that was an AM signal. So the issue, I had two stations. I had Big, which was like a classic rock boom style radio station, and then I had a fresh radio as well. I started during the pandemic, and within I didn't even, like 7 months in, I still had never been to the radio station. I'd been doing everything remotely. So getting to know the talent was very interesting there. You talked about, talent coming up. Well, what's interesting about Kingston is a lot of the talent just wants to stay there. They actually really love it. There's really, I had a producer there. I don't know if anybody picked him up. He got blown out a few months after I did. Everybody did, right? I got February of last year, I got blown out. And then in June of last year, they basically shut the 2 radio stations down and the global TV station too, as well, with the exception of a couple of videographers. So, you think it could be a good feeder market, but I think the talent there, they've got Ben and Reed on the Bell station, which I guess has been sold to the MyFM people. Those guys have been there forever. You got Sideshow, who was at K-Rock. He was there forever. And as soon as his non-compete was done, I hired him right away because the talent, he's so good. But they don't want to go anywhere. Bill Wilichka, he called himself, these are big fish in little ponds, and they were really good to work with, to be completely honest. It's its own little world. Everything seems so much more important than it really is. When you have some perspective, when you come in from outside and everybody's freaking out about something, it's like, guys, just chill. It's okay. It was a really challenging market, but in the 3 years I was there, Big went from number 3 to number 1, and Fresh went from number 7 to number 4. So I did what I was supposed to do.
Tell me about the ratings. Like, ratings are good, but it's not really everything when it comes to, making decisions, right?
No, it's not. No, it's only the ratings are everything when it comes to money. That's your national buys are all based on your rating. You've got these people, they literally just look at the top 3 stations. Oh, I've got Shoppers Drug Mart wants to advertise. They're just going to take the top 3. They don't care. They don't know. They don't care about the people. They're from Toronto. They don't know. They don't know the relationships that we have with people. So getting in that top 3 is very, very important. It's like it's a diary market, man. Like, I mean, at least you can fill out diaries online now. It's not like you have to fill them out with a pen and paper. Sample was 1,100 people. So it's a decent, and statistically speaking, I did take Statistics 101 in the 1 year of university I did. That's a good sample size for the size of the market. It gives you a representation that is accurate, they say. I think a lot of that market really is a recall market, big time, because Fly FM was the heritage kind of top 40 station. And when Bell flipped it to a not Move, there's Move and
Virgin,
Bounce. Oh no, they flipped it to a Move. Bounce is the other one. They flipped it to a Move. Their ratings went boom. It's the exact same lineup, musical tweak, but I mean, people just, and I don't know the mechanism when you're filling out. If they changed Fly went in. That's how Big did so well, to be honest. Is it was just before I got there, they flipped. They did this, cross Canada rebrand of these heritage stations. Another sign they just didn't give a shit, and they clearly didn't. They've sold them. How many of them now? And so the ratings. You live and die by 2 books a year, really. And what's the win or lose? We booze. It's like we're just gonna. You can't take as high. One book I got this crazy bump with Big, and it was like insane. Like it was like I was getting double digits across the board, and it was a sample issue for sure.
Yeah.
So you take that with a grain of salt. So then, if you're going to take that with a grain of salt, you got to take everything on the bottom as a grain of salt too. Like, hey, you know what? There are more people listening to Fresh than what we got credit for.
Yeah, so Bell really didn't care about what the station was called. They were just happy to move it along. And the great example was right here in Winnipeg.
He did it across the country.
Yeah, so Bob was the founding classic hit station back in 2002. It was number one. And
Coogan,
Bob,
right?
You're now Bounce.
Yeah, they did the same. So before I was there, I had a contract position. I was running K-Lite in Hamilton. Now, K-Lite is like the brand in Hamilton. That's like Coca-Cola. K-Lite was everything. No, we're just going to blow that out. That's be like in London, Rogers changing Chime to whatever. No, Chime is like, there's power in branding, obviously, and you'd think they would get that, but I'll just say it, they don't. They're divesting themselves of the stations. They're not meant to be broadcasters. I'm sorry, they're just not.
Yeah.
So here we are.
Well, tell me, inside Kingston, who is your competition when it comes to radio in a market like that?
Oh, so I mean, are you talking about like the actual companies or the stations, or what do you mean?
Well, you know that radio is, who you're up against radio-wise, but outside of radio.
Oh, I see. No, you know what? We were lucky. We had the TV station, right? So we had global, so we could package it all together, and that really helped because the 6 o'clock news, they stopped rating in like television in Kingston ages ago, but the numbers were like through the roof. Like global TV, their 6 o'clock newscast, the guy who they had the Kent Brockman, you've been there forever guy, and walks around town. Hey, how's it going, everybody? And it was insane. So that we didn't have that competition. The Kingston Whig Standard would have been the print, and it went. It's kind of like a mere shadow of itself. The other thing that actually did come up is the Kingstonist, the website, actually was a bit of competition for us, not necessarily for dollars, but the fact is they were hungry. They had journalists. They had kids who wanted to get stuff. They had kids who were hustling and going out to things, whereas I got 8 people running 2 radio stations, and I'm trying to be as live as possible. So it was a union shop, so that was a different kind of challenge as well. So it's like, I can't send you out to that because that's not that's going to be overtime, so I can't do that necessarily. So the Kingstonist was an interesting little cog in that machine out there.
And you got 3 years out of it, and then you got blown out.
Yep. Yeah, I got blown out in February.
Did you see it coming?
I did not. Well, no, okay, that's not true. I did see it coming. I didn't see it coming then. When I started, so Chorus had a different, I think you would know this, like they didn't have general managers, right? So they got, ages ago, they got rid of that.
2015.
Yeah. So remember Astral, everybody was a brand manager. Nobody was a program director. Chorus did the same thing. They changed everything around. So the regional program directors, and then locally were program managers. So I was program manager for those 2 stations. And I think across the country, when I started, there was about 12 or 13 program managers. When I was let go, there was 3 of us left. So, I knew it was coming. I just didn't think it would. I knew it was coming. I'll be honest. I thought they were gonna. I thought they would have wanted me for the Edge and Q at some point. That was the idea. I made no secret of that. I wanted to run Edge and Q.
Yeah, and I would have thought that a market like Kingston would be a great feeder for talent moving up, whether it was somebody who was doing.
Talent didn't want to move though. That was the problem. No talent wanted to move. They would go there. We had lifers there. My morning show, my two of my hosts, Derek and Monica, on each station were both Derek was there for they're both there for 10 plus years, 15 years.
It's like tenured professors who just
I love it.
They just want to go to Cornell or Dartmouth or Bowdoin or retire in some Maine community and enjoy the life.
Exactly. So I saw it coming. That's why I actually started. I just graduated the Second City program here in Toronto for sketch and improv, and that was a kind of a 2-year thing. I started it while I was the program director in Kingston, because I was like, you know what, I may have to enter the gig economy, right? Because the way radio's going, my plan kind of was maybe I'll start teaching. I'll start teaching improv on the side. And do a few of those a week. Plus I DJ, so do a couple DJ gigs a week, and then I'm trying to get voice gigs. I've got an agent and all that. So I'm like, maybe I'll do that. And that was, I was definitely heading in that direction. I was unemployed for almost all of last year. So yeah.
Okay, so this is important because anybody who's listening to this, whether you're on air, you have a live show that you do, or you want to become a voice actor and get into the voice business, tell me about the value of improv.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's funny, you get your scripts. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm coming up on a year of doing self-tapes, and I've had 3 callbacks. I haven't booked yet. My problem is, so the acting thing, they want people who sound real, right? Now, back in the day, it would have been, kind of that 80s movie trailer. Hey, big ballsy voices and stuff. They want if you listen to radio commercials and cartoons too. Cartoons are a big thing. A lot of them are produced here. They want real. They want people who can show inflection and do different things. My problem is I didn't realize this. My voice sounds like a broadcaster's voice. And whenever I try to act real, I'm like, no, that's how I sound. Like, they're like, you're too announcery. I'm like, no, that's how I talk. So I'll be honest. The improv thing helps a ton. I did improv all through high school. I used to go back and coach my high school team. So it's like as soon as I kind of saw that this radio thing might have been coming to an end, and I was fully prepared for it last year, I was definitely thinking I still needed a performance of some sort in my world. And improv will help you as a broadcaster. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Because you gotta, nowhere, what happens when, all of a sudden, we lose, whatever, media touch crashes or whatever, whatever you're using. And what are you going to do? You got to talk for 5 minutes while the engineering tries to get it going, because guess what? There's no CD anymore for the backup or, whatever. So improv's great. I highly recommend, not necessarily Second City, anywhere you can take a little improv class, go for it.
Yeah, that's one of the things. If you've been in radio for a long time and you need to get into the voiceover world, to go from announcer style voice over into, real life, real conversational type person. That's a long trip, and it involves unlearning and relearning, as opposed to somebody who's never been on the radio before who can just sort of show up and do it.
Yeah, we have a certain way of presenting things, and I have a certain energy that I've been told. And I've also, that I still haven't, I've come close. Like I said, I've got a couple callbacks and stuff, but I know people who have gone years without it. So it's a good thing I wasn't relying on it full time. That's for sure.
I would recast you as just a high energy person and just remove he's not an announcer. He's just high energy.
Yeah, no, well, exactly. They don't even look. My understanding is these casting directors, what I've been told, my daughter is an aspiring actress as well. She's grade 9, goes to an art school. They don't even look at your resume. They literally they ask for the tape, and if it's if it's something that's with camera, they just look at the picture and listen to and watch your tape. In radio, they don't even look at your resume and your background, everything you've done. They literally just listen to it. Nope, and that's it. So I think it's like anything. Remember when PPM came in and we all lost our minds and said, "Oh, we only got 4 seconds to catch their attention." I feel like it's that way with the casting directors a little bit.
Well, I think with any demo, whether it's for radio or for voiceover, you want to have a good demo. At the same time, there's a lot of casting people out there who are looking for versatility, and so that big $2,000 demo that you had made is good. However, you got to be able to show your versatility either inside that demo, or maybe there's other things you can do. Because I do see producers go, especially when this comes to radio imaging, show me more. Show me you can go off script. Yeah. Show me you can go sideways.
Yes.
But do you have a favorite imaging person that you?
Jamie Watson. Yeah. Jamie Watson's brilliant.
Okay, you can't take him because he's mine. So find someone else.
No way, man. He's everybody's. You kidding me? Jamie's the best. We worked with Amanda Maddie. And Todd, her partner there, they gave us a really good deal at Fresh in Kingston. They were terrific. She actually just posted on her Facebook. I love Amanda. She's great. That like The Weeknd always uses her for all his stuff. And she's legit. But if you're talking about the ability to do that, like here's a script that my overworked creative writer, he writes 6 promos for 6 different things. That's be honest, it's kind of fucking flat. Pardon my, it's kind of flat. And then you give it to Jamie Watson, you got to take it to the next level. That's the kind of person you need. And the thing is, those people are far and few between now. I haven't. While I was there, the last time I looked for, well, 2 years ago now, when I first started at Fresh, I wanted to freshen up the imaging there, and I had to fight to get that done, but I did get it done eventually. And I went with Amanda, and I think it's Todd is the male voice. They're really good.
It's bizarre because I think it's the one of the greatest advantages radio has is to be able to write and promote and to make great promos and to get a great producer to do it. But we're just looking to cut, and this is just the absolute wrong area to cut.
Well, so yeah, I mean, I always say, if your imaging voice literally is your radio station talking. That's the way I was like, that's the radio. That is the personification of the radio station is the imaging voice. And there's music marketing in mornings. I always had a production, promotions, and people was what I always talked about with my team, because I think that production and promotions are just as important as music marketing in mornings, and the people in the station are the most important.
Yeah, and one of the things in podcasting that they're really struggling with, and they do very, very poorly, is audio promos, myself included. I'm not there with it. Like, I don't have and this is 8 years after doing this, that, for each, you really do have to drill down to an episode. You really got to drill down to what's the purpose of this podcast. You've got to appeal to people's emotions. You just can't say, well, this is a Sound Off podcast and this is Matt Kundle and it's been going for 8 years and you really should listen. It's got to be better. It's got to be stronger, and it's got to be worth something. We're fighting for people's time.
Yeah. What is the mechanism in which you are marketing? Because I have a podcast I'm having a hard time figuring out where it's going to land now that I'm on air 5 days a week. And I'm actually altogether, I'm doing because I'm doing some voice tracking for the company too. So I don't know where the podcast is going to land for me. But I started it during the pandemic. I'm like approaching 90 episodes, which is more than most people with podcasts have ever done. But what is your mechanism for marketing it? Like, what do you like? You're talking about? Are you talking about taking clips and turning it into what works?
So I've got the mechanism to take a promo, and I'll do a promo for this episode, and put it out through a bunch of other podcasts. When people get to the end of some podcasts, let's call it let's say whether it's the Broadcast Dialogue podcast or any of the other ones in the network, that people will hear a promo saying, hey, have you checked out this episode that I did with Bob Willette? Because it's really, really good and you should listen to it. And I'll try to appeal to people's emotions. You should listen to this so that you don't become unemployed like Matt did.
like a jaded ex-radio guy.
Yeah, exactly. But there's also more to it. So, and then there's a little bit of presence in reels. So if you put a reel up, I think that's like a billboard on a highway sort of thing, because people are, they're scrolling all the time. And I think that there's, the platforms like LinkedIn, so the business people will see stuff. There's, do an entire video of the episode so you can put that on YouTube. Maybe somebody trips over it while they're, going through the world's second biggest search engine. So it's sort of a collection of things. But marketing wise, and this came from a voiceover talent at a conference in Toronto years ago. We were trying to figure, well, what's marketing? We're marketing ourselves as a voice talent. We're doing this. In the end, marketing is really just being involved and inserting yourself into something.
Yeah. Some community, right? Because we're talking about communities here. It's not, it's as much as just digital. Somebody asked me, what's this podcast you're going on? I'm like, oh, Matt, I've known him for years off and on. And, I said, his podcast is always on Broadcast Dialogues, weekly email out. And that's big. And Broadcast Dialogue has been so good to me over the years with, following my career and giving one. They gave me the Program Director of the Year award. And, I said, I like Matt, we've been talking off and on. I was like, now that I'm kind of settled in what I'm doing, I'll be glad to talk to business. And I work for a company right now where I don't feel like I'm going to get punished for saying anything. I wouldn't say anything derogatory about the company because I've only been there 3 months. There's nothing derogatory. They hired me. I don't have anything derogatory to say. But as you know, there's not a lot of positive things to say about what's going on the broadcast side of things. And on the podcast side of things, I still there's still not a lot of people making good money. There's people making money, but not a lot of people.
So I look at podcasting as a marketing thing. I love that you said community, because I think we're in the community building business now. I will talk about your podcast in just a sec, but I do want to talk about that time between when you were let go in Kingston to getting on at Indy 88.
Yeah.
How long?
I was let go in February. I started on November 3rd. I was almost it was a long time, man. It was almost a whole year. They offered me 2 months severance. I'd been there for 3 years, and I had worked for the company before for 3 years before that. Not that really matters, but I guess it felt. Thankfully my brother-in-law's a lawyer, and we sent a couple letters, and I ended up getting, I think I got 4 months severance, which was pretty good. I kind of rode that out, and then I went on unemployment, man, because sorry if that was mine, probably. Apologies.
I didn't even hear anything. What happened?
Oh no! Oh, my email went. Oh, you didn't hear it? That's good. Oh, that's good. It's not feeding you. No, it's my work email's open here. So, so I decided when I was let go that I was done with being a program director. I do not want to be a program director again. The way the system's set up right now, your middle management, you have no real power, you have no creativity, you're essentially a babysitter, and you are administering other people's ideas that you have no idea, you have no input in. That's not why I got into radio. I didn't get into radio to become an administrator. I got into radio to entertain people. That's I love entertaining people. When I was at Proud FM, as small as that radio station was, I was involved in and worked with some of the most creative people I've ever worked with, and made some of the best radio I've ever made. We've ever made, not just me. And because the owners literally just said, do what you want, just don't cost us any money. And that's what we did. So I was like, all right, here we go. And it was a bit of the Wild West. And I know that's not everything. You do need those other tools. You need research, and you need I get all that, but I want all those tools if I'm going to be the programmer, but I want to have a modicum of control. Not control, say. I just want some say in things. I found you're completely dismissed now, at least in the corporate side of things. I did a year at Bell. And that was a mat leave cover, so that was a little weird. Like, it's a mat leave cover. You're keeping the seat warm for somebody else. I knew what I was getting myself into, but at least they paid me like an adult there. So like if you're there, so I didn't mind necessarily. All right, well, okay, if I don't have a say in that, that's all right. I can afford to save money right now, whereas most of the other jobs I've ever had, I can't with this business. So it was tough, man. It was really tough. So I'd been talking to Ian March, who I know you've had on. I've been talking to Ian for quite some time, and I was talking to Ian and actually to Troy at Boom while I was still at Chorus in the fall before they let me go. I was talking to both of them about doing weekends. Troy and I were talking, and he brought Tarzan Dan in instead. And I was like, well, if Bingo Bob isn't going to get a job because of Tarzan Dan, I can't complain there, right?
Yeah.
That's okay. And Ian, they were going through Ian's the program director at Indy 88 still. They were going through the ownership changes. So he's like, I want you. I could hear you do it. To Troy, I'll give Troy a shout out here. Troy was like, man, I would really like to. He goes like, but you got a family, and this is like, per shift twice a week. It's not like, no, like you're gonna lose your benefits. You lose that. I'm like, Troy, I know they're gonna get rid of me. I need a job, and working weekends at Boom is a pretty damn good gig. And I know the rest of that team's not going anywhere, but when they do, I want to be there,
Oh, and you forgot to mention the appeal of the creativity in that building.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have fun, right? It sounds like they're having fun.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah. So anyhow, so I was literally, the day that Ian had posted for a swing announcer, I was literally tallying up all the jobs that I had applied for. That I got no responses to, because I didn't want to go back to programming. Everybody's like, you want to be or general managers or sales. I'm like, no, I don't want. I want to go on air. I know what I can do, and I know what I can bring to the table as an announcer. I've been doing this a long time. I need to get back in front of the mic. And it sounds cocky, maybe, I don't know, but I just knew what I was meant to do. And then I started to apply for jobs, TTC job, 911 operator, all kinds of things. And and then that job posted up, and I emailed Ian and I said, hey, do I need to send you stuff? You've got all my stuff. We've gone for beers and talked. And he's like, let me call you at 5:00. And he offered me the job at 5:00 that day.
Yeah. And for those who are sitting there and thinking, well, why would anybody not want to be program director? I saw this happening back in 2013, where they were really asking for a top-tiered chef or aspiring chef who wants a Michelin star. and really being told, no, you're going to be the prep cook and cut the carrots and celery and other things at Earl's.
Well, yeah, or here's the Boston pizza menu. You're going to cook, here's all the frozen stuff and boil and bag stuff. And, like why? And again, I'm not saying I'm a Michelin star. I love the comparison. I'm not saying I'm a Michelin star chef, but what I'm saying is, if you brought me in for a reason. I've done so. I've been involved in and helped create, not just me, and helped create some pretty great radio along the way. And I love it. And I'm still passionate about this industry. And I think it has a place. It's funny, on my improv class, my troupe there, we have a 25-year-old woman, and she said, "Do you think radio still matters?" And I said, I better, because I'm in it again. I think, the funny thing was, and then she's from Ottawa, and then she started naming all the people in Ottawa. She's like, well, I don't really listen to radio, but I know blah, 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 blah. Sandra Plagakis and all these. I was like, oh, well, then, like, the fact is, you're 25 and you know them. I said, look, we matter. Yes. We have to change. Like, we have not just change our content, not just change. Like, I always get on this. We've been using the same clocks since the 50s. Like, we've been using clocks exactly, programming the same way. I think the key for us is really how we make money. I think 30s are going to go the way of the dodo. They have to. Like, nobody listens to 30s. You're going to have a 5.5 minute stop set where everybody just leaves. No, we need to train. So we need to find ways to make money the way podcasts are making money, with integrated sponsorships and but then you need talent,
which is how it started back in the 50s.
Well, that's the irony, is that in the TV did, right? Like, in the middle of like a show, be like, oh, here's a Virginia Slim, and then off they go. I think that's what we need to do. There's so many barriers in the way, not the least of which is that the buyers for the national products still don't get it either yet. So that education has to happen too. So whoever's working for Target or CBS or whoever's doing the buying, you need to be able to convince them, like, no, you don't need a 13-week, every other day, blah, 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 bullshit thing. No, what you need is you need to get to know my morning show host, and you need to give him the product. And and then you give us a bunch of money, and he's going to talk about it. You know what I mean? Like, that's what, and he's going to talk about it as this many times. But they just, I mean, is it a challenge? Oh, absolutely. It's a huge challenge. But I think that's where our future lay.
Right. So here you are inside an independent company,
yes,
kind of, sort of, yes, there are multiple radio stations. But, once you get outside the Bell, the Chorus, and the Rogers ecosystem, there's a different vision. So in my other life, in my unlived life, I'm supposed to own a radio station at this point.
Oh, yeah, you and me both, bud.
Yeah. But I'm sort of thinking here that if you're at a place like Indy,
yeah,
and maybe you do locally sell those creative host reds and take the national stuff, and you can just sort of bury it. Listen to how good this sounds. And you're getting killed by this other spot over here. You want to run 30s? We'll sell you all the 30s in the world.
You're always going to have the 30s. I get it, but that's not where I don't think it's efficient.
No, people, especially the younger generation, they're conditioned for a whole bunch of other things.
You mentioned YouTube earlier. What's the first thing you do? Skip ads, right? So that, like, thinking that people will listen. And then the other thing too is, oh, well, we've gotten rid of the best creative people. They've gone elsewhere. Like our writers, our creative writers, our producers, they've all left. They've all, I mean, there's still some good people around, but man, oh man, these telecoms, I got to say, they've really just, they came in, Bell came in and bought everything, and then they just threw a grenade, and now they're leaving. Or a grenade. They threw several grenades, and now they're just leaving.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, wow, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Bye. It's so now working for Christopher Grossman. He's a real straight shooter, really smart guy. What I found interesting about it, he listens. So they had offered, so I came in as a weekend announcer, and they had offered me something else, and I was like, I don't know if that's the best use of my time and my talent. And we talked, and I said, here's what I think I should be doing. You tell me. And I said, but look, we can do that other thing. And he's like, no, you don't want to do it? We're not doing it. And I was like, wow, he listened. He actually listened to me. So it was really good to have that happen, because it had been a while since somebody listened in a work environment.
So what are you doing?
So I am now officially so I'm a full-time announcer with Indy 88. I do weekends and evenings. So I'm doing, when PPM came in, we saw how important evenings are, or not evenings, weekends are. Weekends are like through the roof important, especially in a city like Toronto where you got to drive your kid to soccer and hockey and this and that. You're in your car all the time, all weekend long. The traffic I live on the Danforth in Toronto, and sometimes the Danforth's busier on Saturdays than it is during the week.
For sure.
Like during the week, it's busy in the morning and the drive, but on Saturday, it's busy all day. Like there's just people going somewhere all the time.
Yeah, what you've done in these cities, Edmonton, Calgary. I see it in Winnipeg too. I listened to my producer Evan. I listened to his Saturday.
Yeah,
he had to drive. I said, you have 150 kilometers in your car with 2 hockey games across, and that's just in Winnipeg. Yeah. I've got a friend in Calgary, Patricia. She's in her car like all the time, Monday to Friday. But Saturday, this is when our cities, the way they're built, unleashes everybody in suburbia to cross the city.
All the 905ers here. All the 905ers come in, and they got to go to this arena, or they got to go to the mall. They got to go to Yorkdale. They got to do this. Oh no! And you say 150 kilometers. For us, it's like it's only 12 kilometers, but it takes just as long.
Yeah, and that thing with the mall. I've seen that for years, where everybody gets in a car. It's Saturday between like 3 and 5. They're rushing to get something done. So I have scheduled a nap for the last 30 years between Saturday, between 3 and 5, just so I don't have to deal with that.
I love the Saturday nap myself. But so I'm doing Saturdays. I do 1 to 6 p.m. I do 5 hour lives, all live. So there's not a lot of live radio anymore. So I'm doing 1 to 6 live on Saturdays. I'm doing 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Sundays. And then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday evenings, we're doing live real radio, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. in Toronto here at Indy. Nobody is doing it. Nobody else is doing real live radio. And I'm doing it.
When you get outside the ecosystem of the corporate companies where radio is not first, and you go into a company where radio is first, how does that change your view of radio and the future of radio?
So I'll harken back to a conversation I had with John Pohl, of course, in my FM. I talked to him years ago. I totally forgot. I think when he was launching the Napanee station, I can't remember. Well, him and I had talked. I can't remember where I was at Proud actually, and I saw a job. It was a general manager job. And him and I had a really good conversation back then. I think he's a real, he's a classic radio guy. Like he's like, we could nerd out on radio all day, him and I, much like yourself and I. And him and I, we talked about, what we think. I kind of gave my spiel earlier of what I think, needs to happen. And his spiel is we've been underserving ourselves. We've been undercharging for ourselves. Like his whole thing is like, we've been giving away the farm for free and we should have been charging way more than we were. But because the Home Hardware on Main Street's been a client, here's your $7 for a 30. You know what I mean? Like it's like, or even less sometimes, $1 a hauler kind of things. So I think it's amazing to sit, when I talked to Chris so I think I'm one of his first hires because part of he had to keep the team, right? That is the one of the things that I don't know where, but the agreement was with the outgoing, the Central Ontario broadcaster was like, no, you can't just like go in and blow the place up. So he's got some sort of, he has to keep the people who are there. And I think I'm one of the first hires, me and maybe Jackie, who's the third on the morning show now. And him and I have had some really great conversations. He's got a perspective on radio. I mean, he owned all the Moose. He owned Halliburton, right? So it's great to talk to somebody who is as vested and invested, if you will, in what it is, the nuance of what we do, because it is, it's the small things that make up the big picture. And I mentioned the music marketing mornings and my production people and promotions. Like, yeah, you know what? If we played a promo, here's an idea. If we played a promo for the Sunday morning diner during the Sunday morning diner, is it the end of the world? No, but we shouldn't do it. And he knows that, and he gets that, and he knows you got to hire the right people to make sure that doesn't happen on the reg. You know what I mean? So I'm encouraged. I worry about that other side that I mentioned. I worry about other people outside the industry understanding, and I worried about the narrative that shitty old jocks who shit on the on the industry that bought their house, who continue to shit on our industry. It's like, you worked for these guys. You made huge dough when there was huge dough to be made. I still got 15, 20 years left in me. I'll be 50 next year. I just turned 49. I still got 15 years left in me before I can retire. So why are you kicking me while we're down a little bit? I don't understand why these bitter radio guys who got walked out are being so negative.
Well, because they don't know where to lay the blame. I know where to lay the blame.
Yeah.
And that's, I'll point it first at the regulator. I mean, the regulator has messed this up. The 12 people who were in charge of the purchases, who let phone companies buy this up and start to shred them, who did not call them to the carpet to ask them about the promises of performance, who did not want to do that. And by the way, if you think, well, why would they do that? They're not sitting around and doing nothing necessarily, but they did need the phone companies to do some favors for them. And hey, why don't you look past this radio stuff? And we'll build you some phone lines to some communities. We're going to bolster here. We'll bolster there.
It was sketchy.
Well, they shouldn't have owned this stuff in the first place. It was really not the thing to do. For years, it was like, let's make sure the newspaper doesn't buy up the radio stations and markets. And you did something worse. Now you let the phone companies have it. And they did exactly what a lot of people said and what you just said, and they're going to strip these things to the ground and run them into the ground. And now here we are. And this is not the fault. Right now, it's not the fault of, listen, Bell's just being Bell. They're corporations. I have a business.
Expect nothing less. Why would we expect anything more?
Yeah. And so here we are. We're asking. And so I thought this was really interesting. And as we record this is the day one of the tariffs that Donald Trump has dropped on everybody. And there's John Pohl, who feels like a bit of a lone voice. We know there's a couple others who are like, maybe now's the time not to be buying Facebook and Google, and try buying ads on your local radio station. Today might be the day to go and re-engage.
He's so smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're right. I've had the opportunity to actually write and present to the CRTC a couple times. When I was at Evanov Radio, I helped them with a couple of applications and whatnot. Actually, I for the application for when CKLN got shut down, and for 88.1, we had proposed putting Proud FM from 103.9 FM onto 88.1, and we didn't get it. Obviously, Central Ontario Broadcasting got it. But I mean, the fact is, so you're talking on the bigger picture when it comes to ownership and what they did. I'm talking now programming. Programming wise, they have handcuffed us. It's not an equal playing field. Even now, Indy 88's 40% CanCon. Everybody else, and I think KISS in Toronto still is 40%, and everybody else is 35%. How is that? And we have a commitment with emerging. But guess what? Where's the list for emerging artists?
How's that even defined?
There's no charts. Like Radio and Records magazine, Billboard's American. What do they know?
Yeah,
it has to be an emerging Canadian artist. So no, they've completely, they're absolutely doing us no favors at all. Like, I don't know. Do you know how much money the CRTC costs every year too? Like, if you just Google that, it's ridiculous.
Well, I applied to be commissioner a number of years ago, and I know what that salary is. I did not get the job. They didn't even interview me for it.
So that's very offensive. You should.
I thought I'd be pretty good at it.
I think, you know what the problem is now with the CRTC now, I actually think, much like the corporate ownership, radio's really a small part of the deal now, right?
Yeah.
So like even money-wise, like so they just don't have the time. Or they don't have the time. They've got like 1,000 workers at the CRTC. They have the time. They just don't know what to do. They don't know how to get there.
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out what they do all day.
I have no idea. I have no idea.
I mean, you're talking about, Bell selling those radio stations. It has taken longer than a year to approve it. There are people who have jobs that they don't know what they're doing next with their career. You're leaving them in limbo. Yep. It's disgusting.
No, it's horrible. The Peterborough and Lindsay stations were just approved for Durham Radio, who I used to work for Doug Kirk there. And how long ago was that? Was that over a year? It's got to be over a year. Yeah,
absolutely.
Why did that take a year? Why does any of it take a year? It shouldn't. It should be like, oh, well, what? Okay, stamp, good. I mean, I know they were. It's funny, they were worried about the ownership changes and how many FMs you can have in the market and whatnot. That's the least of our worries, I think. If we got a John Pohl who wants to own all the radio stations in a market, good. Like, just to make sure, it's not about how many you own, it's who owns it and what are they going to do with it.
Yeah, and I feel bad for radio stations, and Steve Jones points this out quite often on LinkedIn, and I'm glad he's doing it, just to point out the sheer stupidity of Rod Stewart is CanCon and Celine Dion is not CanCon. Aerosmith Deuces Are Wild, that's one of my favorite ones.
Oh, yeah, no. Isn't Hit Me With Your Best Shot by Pat Benatar is CanCon?
Yeah.
Is it that one? Yeah, I think it's Hit Me With Your
It's that one.
Yeah, no, I know. I have that. I know, and Steve's been doing that a lot lately. I've seen him doing that. Of course, he's Sting right now, right? So that's an interesting company. I've never worked for them, but they still, they still have. They seem to care about, at least I know the people who are there care. I know that. I don't know about the company.
Well, they've got classic hits, right? And so a lot of stations and a lot of popular classic hit stations, a lot of people who listen to radio are our age and over 50. So this is the music they like, but they're stuck playing these antiquated songs, some of which
Trooper again.
Yeah, and I feel bad. Listen, there's always like a some sort of really bad CanCon song that I might like, and I'll just listen to just because why not? But I would hate to have 35% of my playlist tied to that. And in the car, sometimes I'll hear it and I'll just go, I think I'll listen to a podcast now.
Yeah, well, I understand why the emerging component came in. I understand because the spirit of the Maple CRTC CanCon rule was to help Canadian artists along and help foster and grow our music industry. However, what it turned into is just basically lining the pockets of older songwriters who are part of SoCan and very few people are rich writing Canadian hit radio. I get it. I understand that. But the point is, we instead of, at a station when I was at the Edge, say, instead of playing some new band that was playing Queen West that was up and coming, here's 5440 again. Or, it's like that's, and so I understand getting the emerging, but when, a station like Indie 88 who plays so much great new music and is finally seeing they're 10 years in now, and I hope I'm coming on at the right time. They're just starting to see the results numbers wise. They're really they're getting there. They've refocused the sound of the station, and the idea of what it is Toronto's modern music. But guess what? Modern music, we're still going to play Bowie. We're going to play Stevie Nicks. We're going to play classic songs that people love, because if you want us to play the new track by the band Valley, you got to surround that with shit people know, because Valley is great. But if I hear nothing but Valley or Valley's contemporaries, nobody's going to stay. A very small amount of people who are tastemakers and all that will stay. So the thing is, I understand why you're being rewarded. You should, a new, as opposed to having a secondary emerging requirement, how about give me 2 selections for every emerging artist I play? As give me 2 CanCon for that, 2-to-1 for playing new stuff. And I know that doesn't help Stingray, but I'm just there's got to be some way. Or how about give me a non-album, give me an album hit. Remember AOR? Give me an album cut from Trooper instead of Raise a Little Hell, and then we'll give you an extra. We'll give you an extra 10%. I don't know.
Actually, we'll give you a triple if it's in Drive.
Exactly. Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Yeah, because otherwise, I mean, go turn the radio on at 11 p.m. at night and see what you get.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the emerging talents in music.
Yeah.
And then this is the part that I really began to sort of see, especially when podcasts came up and when new media and, eventually TikTok and stuff. And that's for talent. Like, you yourself are CanCon. And it was, Chris Burns who mentioned this one. I think he did it in front of the CRTC. Like, why is it that somebody like Josie Dye, who will do a break on radio, that doesn't count for anything? That break counts for nothing. Oh, but she goes on TV and does it on the social.
Yeah.
That's Canadian content.
That's part of their Canadian content. Yeah.
What's that?
That's a great point, is what that is. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, there were, so category 1, category 1, category 2, category 3 are these old. Category 1 is news and spoken word. Category 2 is popular music, and category 3 is non-popular music. And so, and these are things that you have to, you're as a broadcaster, you're keeping track of this and making sure you're hitting all the expectations of license versus the conditions of license are two different things as well, right? So the whole thing's antiquated. It is so out of date. It needs to all be blown up. I'm not saying, I don't think radio would stop playing Canadian music if you told them that they didn't have to play anything. I don't think that's the way to go, but I think maybe 10% would be a nice number. Give me 10%. Give me 10%. And if you're a classic station, give me 10%. If you're a new station, give me 20%. And 10% of that should be emerging. And we're off to the races. And 24 hours a day. Forget this 6 to 12 thing.
All right.
That's that would give us a fighting chance. How are we gonna fight again? Like, again, I always do this thing right here. My phone has every song ever written in it. Every song. Why do I don't need to listen to the radio for the music. I need to listen to the radio for the guy who's going to tell me about the music and maybe win tickets to go see a show with them. But I don't need this. I don't need the radio because of this thing. It's ridiculous.
You have a podcast. The podcast is about change. It is called Bob's Basement.
Yeah, where I am right now.
Listen, this podcast about change. You've had so many people come through the doors just to talk to them about their lives and the ever-changing world that they go through. Tell me about your plans for that for the future.
Yeah, you know what? It's a little bit, talk about limbo. A lot of it really just, it's about my hustle, right? It's about how much hustle I have. And I got to admit right now, so I said this to Blair Bartram the other day. Blair reached out and said some nice things about my show because I've been posting stuff and he's been listening. And he was the first program director actually that ever put me on the air as an announcer. I'd been on the air on talk radio, on Mojo Radio, but I'd never been a jock. So it was nice to have Blair check in. So here's what I said to him, and this is another reason why I don't necessarily want to become a program director again. I have a 5-hour show. I have 5 breaks per hour. That's 25 times for me to be great. I have 25 times per day to be great, whatever great is. Entertaining, informing, inquisitive, freaky, making, like whatever, WTF, like whatever it is. But I can't, there's no throwaway breaks for me. You can't do that. I expected that from my talent, and I expect that from me as the talent. So it's exhausting. It's a lot of work. I'm lucky that it comes to me naturally. My energy is such that, and it's one of the things I actually have to work on is bringing it down a little bit, because I'm like, I get up here, I get a little excited about stuff, start talking way too fast, and people are like, whoa, Bob, what do you want? I'm like, no, just life. So all of that being said, I'm doing those 5 days a week. Plus I'm actually doing drive on the other 3 stations. I'm voice tracking drive on the other 3 stations that they have. So I'm on the air a lot right now. So my capacity to hustle and book guests, it's honestly, it's the booking is more than is the hardest part, because doing the show, I could do a show no problem. Like, I mean, you get, let's see, I don't know, Rain Maida is available. Yeah, I could talk to Rain just based on what I know about Rain. You know what I mean? I don't need to do a lot of research because I could do the show. It's the booking of the people and getting them on is the hard time. So the long answer to your question, or the short answer to your question, is I don't know right now.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. So there's some great episodes there, and it started during the pandemic, and that's why it was about change. Yeah. And it was Stephen Page. I had Paul Bellini and Scott Thompson from Kids in the Hall. Now, Scott Thompson had a horrible mic. He didn't even have a mic, so it was a little bit hard to listen to. But talking to those, and I worked with Paul Bellini at Proud FM. He's one of them. He's Scott Thompson's writing partner. As a sketch guy, I loved talking to those guys. So I still love doing it. I just got to find the capacity. Yeah.
So here, my advice would be, if it's the booking that's the hard part, invest in a Calendly. And just say, these are the recording times.
Right? Yes.
Right. So these are the recording times, and just send out a bunch of emails to like 10 people you want on the show, and then they'll book in. And if they book in, then that'll be the time that you just do it. Because I think, you have 125 breaks to do a week plus your voice tracking. Look at this as your 126th break. It just takes an hour.
It just takes an hour. Yeah. Yeah. I try to wrap it up before now. 45 to 60 for me.
Yeah. And that's a nice thing, by the way, about a podcast is you can put it down.
Yeah.
And this idea of, oh, you're going to lose all your listeners and stuff, that's already been debunked by Mark Asquith, who did a podcast. He's at Captivate, and he stopped his podcast and then came back to it, and all the downloads are there.
They're still there.
Yeah, you can re-engage the audience, and especially if you're active on social media. I mean, if you never told me, I'd never know that you've just sort of stopped your podcast, because you can always bring it back in another form a little bit later.
Yeah,
so.
I've been using I brought an energy to the social media side of things at Indie that I don't think was there before. And the on-air people have really embraced it. I've been going nuts on social. I expected that from my announcers when I was program director. I really think it's an extension of the brand. And sometimes you get a little bit of resistance. Like, well, I got to put more effort into my on-air breaks. This is taking away from my time to prepare. I'm like, no, it's not. Do both. Like, give me your on-air break, put it on air, do something, show me anything. Like, I'm literally, the other day I was like walking around the station trying to find a toaster, and I turned it into a social media break. Like, it's got to, I think it's really important to do that. And we were talking earlier, harken back to what you said of, with podcasts, and how do we get that marketing out there?
I'm glad you also mentioned like the difficulty in podcasting, and you're kind of like the example of why more radio people don't do a podcast on top of their weekly show, because it's a lot, and the radio's a lot, and then by taking on a podcast, you're essentially doubling the work.
Yeah, well, I've got my trusty Rodecaster, but I mean, all goes into Audition, and I still have to edit it and make sure it sounds good, and I was basically did the show live to tape, right? Like, I very rarely ever took anything out, but it's a lot of effort. It's just getting it, doing it is a lot of effort, And right now, I don't have a permanent setup here in my basement like I did for during the pandemic, but I don't right now. So like, I'm sitting on a kitchen chair with my setup on another kitchen chair and a side table,
Bob, it is so good to talk to you and catch up again. I can't believe it's been like nearly 4 years since we.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
I feel like I just did it yesterday.
I know. Well, we ran into each other at CMW a couple years ago. I think I was with Chorus at that time. Yeah,
totally. We were at. It was. I was going to say it was Radio Days North America, but no, it was the old CMW.
Oh, it was actually CMW. It wasn't Radio Days North America. No. Well, you know what? Thank you for doing what you do and being still being an advocate for radio. It's very much appreciated. Yeah.
Well, I love radio.
I know you do.
Yeah.
There's a lot to love about it. It's a lot to friggin' be frustrated by it, but it's still fun. I'm loving it. I get texts every day from listeners. This is the first time I've worked at a station with active texting. So it's amazing.
Really?
Yeah, because I mean, I was when I was at 94.9 The Rock, they didn't have it. I was doing middays there. We didn't have text in the studio. And I did a 3-month stint at 97.7 Hits FM as afternoon drive before I was the PD there. And yes, that was amazing, because as soon as you come on, it's like, and but today, just every day, people are like, oh man, like just yesterday, it just feels so good to know that you're not changing people's lives, but you're a part of something. A woman texted me. She's like, she goes, I told my husband and I turned the radio on, and my husband turned to me and said, I hope it's Bob that's on that. And she's like, we love your show. And she did this unsolicited, like just out of nowhere. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's why I, feed my ego more. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Matt, thanks so much, buddy.
The Sound Off Podcast is written and hosted by Matt Kundle. Produced by Evan Serminski. Edited by Chloe Emo Lane. Social media by Aiden Glassy. Another great creation from the Sound Off Media Company. There's always more at soundoffpodcast.com.